Hello and welcome to the Meet the Parents podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 39 of the Meet the Parents podcast and another half an hour of chat from some of your favourite parents bloggers. I'm Tim from Slouching Towards Thatcham, and today I'm talking to Amie from Finding Our Feet and Vicky from Verily Victoria Vocalisers. Good evening, ladies.
Hi.
Hello.
So, on this week's podcast, we're going to catch up with what Amie and Vicky have been up to recently, as they've both got some big news to share, very much a case of new beginnings in each instance. Plus, we'll have a discussion about how, for each of us, our blogging and working worlds have become inextricably intertwined. So, last week, Hannah, Mark, Simon and I caught up with what we'd been up to over the Christmas holidays and our plans for 2017. So let's just quickly do the same with both Amie and Vicky. So let's start with Amie. So Amie, what did you, the other half and little miss get up to over Christmas?
It was pretty busy, to be honest. We just the few days before Christmas, we were kind of down to Surrey where my in-laws live. So we saw both his sets of parents because he's got divorced parents. And then my mum came to us for Christmas Day, and we saw my dad and his wife and my nan the weekend before as well. So yeah, the week leading up to Christmas was pretty hectic. And then we were off skiing, or not skiing as the case may be, on Boxing Day because there was no snow. So our skiing holiday very, very quickly became a hiking holiday.
Back to Christmas. Little Miss is 2 now, and I guess this time round she had a much better understanding of what Christmas is all about. So, you know, how excited was she about the festive season, and how early did the excitement start this time?
Well, she's 2 months shy of 3, so we really had the understanding, though you could see throughout December, because obviously nursery had a big build up. We did a book advent, so every day it was meant to be from us, but we just kind of got a bit carried away, and suddenly it was from the elves, and it appeared in the fireplace every day after nursery, and we suddenly were like, oops, oh well. So that kind of helped build the anticipation a bit. You could see by Christmas Day, and obviously she came down and there was all this stuff from Santa, and we'd watched Christmas movies and she kind of had it, she'd read all the books, but the whole day she kept making my mum lie on the sofa, go to sleep. And then she got a sponge in the shape of a minion in her stocking. And she'd like give my mum a pretend wash with the sponge, make her go to sleep on the sofa. And then she'd go, okay, it's time to wake up. Santa's here. And she'd make her go over to the fireplace and they'd pretend to open presents. And then it would all start again. They must have done it 50 times throughout the day. And you could see she was just trying to figure it out. And she was a bit like, it's a bit odd. Definitely. Excitement was definitely there, but she wouldn't. We were still opening presents last weekend. She just was completely overwhelmed on the day, and she really wanted to like enjoy each individual present, even if it was socks. We had to put each pair of socks on, look at them, take them off. They did have My Little Pony on. I mean, they were quite exciting socks. But that meant it was a really long process. And my mum, having been here all day, had never gotten to give her a present. So she came over last weekend and we gave her present then.
And did she want to stay up to try and catch Santa at all on Christmas Eve?
Not really. We watched The Snowman. We had hot whiskey with some apple juice, and she just had hot apple juice with some cinnamon in it. And after that, we just kind of said, okay, time for bed then, and you know, Santa will come if you go to sleep. And she went, all right then. It was probably the easiest bedtime I've ever had. But there was a moment when we kind of read the story and I put her in the cot, and I said, you know, you got to go to sleep now or Santa won't come. And she kind of looked at me as if to say, this is all complete lies. And I thought, how do you know? Don't look at me.
When we spoke before Christmas, we talked a bit about some of the many Christmas traditions that you have in your family, but is there anything in particular that you did this time that you maybe hadn't done in previous years?
So my family always has Bucks Fizz with breakfast. That was new for the other half. And he said that he's not sure he can do that again. He was feeling a little worse for wear by the time he had to cook lunch.
It's the opposite way round in our household. I'm not sure I could survive without.
Yeah, I kind of said, okay, well, you can have a cup of tea next year and I'll have the Bucks fizz. I think one thing we maybe did better than our parents have done in the past is we kind of planned the food throughout the day. So we'd said, right, we planned for lunch to be at 2:00, but it's the first time we're doing it on our own. So probably it's going to be at least 3 before we manage to get our everything done in time, because the timing is, the hard part. So we had planned to do kind of a canapes and 11s type thing at around 11:30 midday, which also coincided with that. Which also coincided with Little Miss's lunchtime, so she wasn't too out of whack. I think we'd try and do that again, where we it's a little and often. Yeah. The whiskey was a nice thing on Christmas Eve as well. That will definitely make an appearance again.
That sounds like a grand idea.
I make myself out to be an alcoholic, don't I?
How about you, Vicky? What did you, Ross and Grace get up to over Christmas?
Okay, so the week before Christmas, we also went to Surrey to see my mum, stayed with her a couple of nights, then came back up. We had a fairly quiet build-up. Ross thought he wouldn't have any work, and he was very wrong. But I managed to sort of slow down and spend quite a lot of time with Grace. And then on this Christmas Eve, we all set off to Ross's mum and dad. We went to Portland, near Weymouth, and that's where they live. And we spent about 3 days with them. And then Grace went off to her father's for a few days, and Ross and I came home and just had some alone time for a few days until New Year's Eve arrived.
It's always nice to have those few quiet days, isn't it? Because there are so few times in the year where you just switch off completely.
I said I felt like I got so much downtime this year in comparison to previous years. And I've been so organised because prior to going to Spain, I made sure I got all my family's Christmas presents done, and made sure that I didn't have to do too much running around when we came back. And I think because I was so organised, it just felt so much more relaxing this year.
Do you get any downtime, Tim, with 3 kids?
It's all relative, really. So,
So no.
normally when we take time off, whether it's during summer holidays or half term or whatever, there's always something planned. We're always doing something. We're going somewhere. There's always something going on. And what we tend to do now between Christmas and New Year is to have a couple of little plans, but actually generally to have things fairly open-ended. Which means that, if we want to have a quiet day and just sit in and watch movies, we can do that. If we want to just, go for a quiet walk or go out for lunch or something, we can do that. So there isn't that pressure of having lots of things to do. So if we do want to just take a couple of hours off and just, collapse in front of the TV, we can do that. So it's, the pace of life at Christmas is definitely much slower than it is at any other time of the year. And that's quite nice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we did something a bit different this year in the fact that we didn't go off to my mum's on Boxing Day, which is what we've always done in previous years. Either that or the other way around. We've been with my mum and gone to see Ross's parents on Boxing Day. But we found this year not having to rush off on Boxing Day much better. And it was much easier because we just stayed in one place for a few days and didn't feel so hectic. So we just found that much better. We'll probably do that again next year.
And how about New Year? Did you do anything to celebrate it? Do you stay up, and does Grace stay up as well?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably her 3rd or 4th year in a row where she's actually stayed up for New Year. I'm quite impressed with her stamina, to be honest. She's just turned 10. And last year, back in, April last year, WrestleMania was on. And Ross had a load of friends over and they watched it live, and Grace stayed up till 5 o'clock in the morning. So midnight was a walk in the park for her. But she had her birthday sleepover because her birthday's on the 2nd of January. So we were trying to work it out as to when she could have she wanted to sleep over this year. So we were trying to work it out as to when we could do this, because she went back to school straight up the day after her birthday. So we thought, let's just ease off some of the parents and have a New Year's Eve party for her. So she was already
fun.
Oh, it's great. I mean, they had a brilliant time. She should have had 3 friends, but unfortunately one of them, her parents got sick. So they said they weren't going to inflict that on us, which was very kind of them. So we had 2 of Grace's friends over, and they spent a lot of time upstairs playing, mucking around. And then they went in the hot tub. And then they had a Chinese took over the living room and watched a film. Yeah, so she was quite happy. She stayed up later than I did. I went to bed about 1:15, which was late for me. And then Grace, I think, must have gone to sleep with her friends about 2:15. So yeah, I don't know how she does it, but she's not always been one of the children who hasn't needed a lot of sleep.
Amy, how does New Year work with you and a not quite 3-year-old?
The other half's birthday is the first. So we have a similar situation where it's kind of a dual celebration. He actually hates it because he's always hungover on his birthday. Oh. No one's ever really in the mood to celebrate. So this year we were in the Alps with his parents and his little brother and sister who are 12 and 10. And we had a few friends over that also have chalets out there for the family. And it was really nice. We just had a nice dinner and we let little Miss stay up. We kept her on British time anyway, so she was kind of going to bed a bit later and getting up a bit later in the mornings, which was quite nice. So I think she stayed up till about 9 o'clock French time. And then we put her to bed and we kind of did a little party with party poppers and stuff for her. She didn't have a clue what it was for. She just kept going. She was in her party dress and she was very excited. She had a party hat. But we were kind of flagging. And my in-laws and their friends, it was like 2:45 and they were still going. And we were like, oh my God, we're flying home tomorrow. We have got to go to bed. So yeah, that was another really stressful, rushed day. I don't know if we'd fly on the first again. We only did because it was just so much cheaper. But no, I mean, she was not kind of really a part of the celebration.
And New Year's celebrations when you're the parents of young children are always slightly different and more subdued than we're pre-kids, aren't they?
Somewhat.
We celebrate New Year with a group of friends who have similarly aged kids. So what we typically do is everyone gets together at one of our houses at some point early in the evening, and the kids, so there were 7 in all across 4 families this year. They eat and they play together and stuff until they crash, while the grown-ups get to work on the important business like cocktails and party games. So I guess this year all 3 of our kids were actually quite keen on staying up till midnight. So Cara flaked out at about 10:30, maybe 11 o'clock, but the boys actually made it through to midnight to raise a celebratory glass of squash while we broke out the champagne. And it's the first time they've managed it, and in a way I'm actually quite glad they got to experience it at last rather than hearing us talking about it afterwards, although it has to be said we did pay for it for about 3 days afterwards as they were absolutely wiped out by it. But before we move on, Amy, have you got any big plans for 2017?
Well, you never know. I mean, we might actually find a house and buy one. But no, other than that, nothing definitely planned.
And Vicky, you've got a big upcoming event to focus on this summer, which we'll circle back to in a little while. But any other big plans for 2017?
Other than that, I'm finding it hard to focus on anything else, to be honest. I'm aiming and I'm saving really hard to get a better camera because I want to do something a bit more professional with it. So I'm hoping to save hard, and Ross is going to help me, I believe, and hopefully invest in something a bit bigger and better than I've got right now. So plans are afoot for that at some point.
Well, good luck to both of you with your plans and aspirations for 2017, and may this year be a great one for all of us.
Absolutely.
At this point, let's share some big news. So if you follow Vicky's blog or her Conception Diaries vlogs, you will know this already. But she had some fantastic news right towards the back end of last year that gives her, Ross and Grace something rather massive to look forward to in the middle of the year. Now, we've touched upon your efforts to conceive a child with Ross on the podcast at a few points over the course of the last year. But let's just start by quickly recapping your journey and your specific circumstances.
It's probably 3.5, 4 years since we started trying. And in that time, we lost one to a miscarriage, and then the second was an ectopic pregnancy. But thankfully, that was self-aborting. So I didn't need any surgery, which was a complete and utter relief for us. And then towards the middle of 2015, Ross and I started having to look at an alternative because it was discovered that my AMH levels, which is a certain level measured in women for the amount of eggs they're still carrying, was low. And also I've got endometriosis and I have a balanced translocation in my chromosomes. So I had quite a lot counting against me. Ross and I decided that we'd go for an egg donor via IVF. And that was hard for me to come to terms with, but with a lot of help and a lot of research and a lot of understanding, We got there and we visited the fertility show in London in November 2015. And if anyone is trying for a baby, I highly recommend that show. I've been twice, and the amount of information we came away with for different reasons on both occasions was immense. And we knew we wanted to go abroad because we knew the waiting lists here were different, and also because here you don't have the right to anonymity when you're an egg donor, whereas abroad you do. And that's what we preferred for us, for our circumstances. So last March, we had our first attempt at IVF in Cyprus, which unfortunately didn't work for various reasons. And the second clinic was IVF Spain in Alicante. And the reason we basically went to them was because we were runners-up in a competition that Fertility Road magazine ran. So we went off to Spain towards the end of October, and we had the embryo transfer carried out on the 2nd of November. So that was the longest 2 weeks of my life following that, where I obviously had the waiting game on lots of medication. By that point, I was taking, I lost count, how many tablets, 20 tablets a day at various intervals, and an injection every evening. In the middle of November, I think it was the 16th, we finally got our result. But it took ages that day, and I felt like I was waiting forever.
How did you break the good news to Grace and to family and friends?
So we had decided, obviously Ross has a big part to play in this, and it's a joint decision as to how we were going to go about telling people. So I was quite happy to just go ahead and just say, look, everybody, it's worked. Now I've got to make sure I get through. But actually Ross said, look, I want to keep it between us for now. And that was hard because I had an awful lot of, as you know, everybody knows, if they follow my blog or social media and me on social media, they know what we're going through. And I had quite a few people say, are you okay? Is everything okay? So that was difficult because obviously I had to keep it stum because that's what Ross wanted and I had to respect his wishes too. We did tell Grace the day we got our result, she came home from school because she's known about pretty much everything we've gone through. She understands that we've had difficulties. She knows that we've had to go away to get help to have a baby. And the day she came home from school, she was just, I don't think she could quite believe it because we've been trying for this for so long. She couldn't believe it. And we did say to her at that point, don't get too excited. We're not out of the woods yet. This still might not work. And bless her, she was sort of quite apprehensively excited, if you know what I mean. But we also told our families, our respective families, my brothers and sisters and both sets of parents, because we just wanted some support from the people who were close to us in case anything didn't happen or did happen, And then finally, we made a decision, if everything was okay, on the 23rd of December, our 10-week scan, that we would go ahead and tell everyone on Christmas Eve because, hey, it's a magical time anyway.
Yeah, it's not like childbirth isn't associated with Christmas or anything, is it? So now what? Will we be seeing more video diaries?
I did do one when we came back from Spain, and I blooming deleted it by mistake in my state of some, pregnancy fog thing. I have been writing a diary of what's been happening, but I'm in a better place now. So I'm going to start recording again. So hopefully going to be published every Saturday again like they were before. But obviously it's a slightly different reason this time. And it will be me talking sort of about my symptoms, what I'm dealing with. The 20-week scan, when that comes up, we'll probably do a gender reveal as well. So, yeah, there's plenty of things in the pipeline.
Excellent. So look forward to seeing those. And, having shared at least part of this journey with you over the past year, I think, I know I speak for both Amie and me and our listeners when I say congratulations, and that we all have our fingers and toes crossed that all goes smoothly over the next few months.
Yay! I was holding it in the whole time. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Oh, I must say, my due date is the 17th of July, and we've got
that means nothing. You'll be late. It's a generic time, but.
Oh, I know. Well, Grace was 10 days early, so who knows?
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, she was. So we'll see. Depends how puffed out I get running around. I moved house a week and a half before she was born last time, so at least I'm not doing that this time.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
So Amie also has some big news of her own.
That's nothing in comparison to Vicky's news.
Sorry, Amy.
Readers, listeners, don't get your hopes up.
I was going to say, before we move on, let's just say quickly that we're not announcing a new sibling for Little Miss.
No, good Lord, no.
But I guess, for all three of us, blogging started out as a hobby, and in various directions it's expanded into something more than that. It's been an online family record, self-therapy, a platform for us to talk about a variety of issues, and for each of us it's also blurred the lines a little bit between blogging as a hobby and blogging as work. So Amie, you're starting this new year with your own big news. Now we discussed this a little bit in the past too, but just quickly recap for us a story that goes all the way back to your maternity leave and trying to get back into the world of work.
So January 2014, I went on maternity leave on January 25th, and I was made redundant, I think it was January 20th or the 21st. So that was a bit of a blow, and obviously a grey area, and kind of sought some legal advice. And for various reasons, we decided to take the package and go quietly. The lawyer did say we had a decent case and that she would support us and take us through the legal process if I wanted to fight it. But as I said, there was various reasons, and it was a really decent package and actually meant I could take a year off with Little Miss. And we couldn't have afforded that, actually, had I been working. So that was a big reason why we decided to take the redundancy. 6 months into my mat leave, we started to sort of think, well, what happens in 6 months when the money runs out? And I started working. So I've been blogging just shy of a year at this point, but it was very, very much a hobby. I didn't even know that you could work with brands or anything like that. But I started working freelance as a social media manager for a couple of parenting startups. By January 2015, it was foot on the gas, job applications getting out, really trying to find something because I'd been unemployed for a year basically. By the following January, I was still unemployed, and I had spent that whole year. I'd been really successful getting through to interview for pretty much most of the jobs I applied for through recruiters and things. But for one reason or another, they kept rejecting me, or somebody else was seen as the better candidate. And in a lot of cases, they asked very un-PC questions about the fact I had a child, about my work ethic since having children, did I want a second child, all kinds of questions that are really not very legal. So it was a really tough year. So by October 2015, I'd been blogging 2 years, unemployed for the better part of 2 years. I finally wrote about it on the blog. And that was kind of the start of my Parents at Work series, so I didn't know it at the time. And Tim, you actually featured me on your previous podcast reading that blog post, The Unemployed Mum. Then in the following January 2016, so a year ago, I finally got a job offer. And that was with a small marketing agency in London who actually specialised in family and educational outreach campaigns. If I'm honest, I probably knew that wasn't my forever job for various reasons. But I really enjoyed the work that I did there. The people were fantastic. And then an opportunity came knocking in the latter half of last year that pretty much felt like it was the perfect next step. So I'm now working as an editor, which is kind of the perfect combination of content marketing, content management, and writing. And it's bizarre. I've had quite a few people say to me, that is the weirdest journey to get into journalism I've ever heard of. But yay, congrats, you got there. Because as a teenager, I always said I wanted to be a journalist. And I graduated during a recession, and the opportunity was in telecoms and in marketing. So that's what I took. So it is funny how kind of things come back on themselves, and I've found my way back there eventually. But I definitely wouldn't have got the job without blogging, because that was the start of, I've written freelance for a couple of websites since then. I've actually written for the website I now work for once or twice. So I had some contacts there as well. And it is funny how just things come full circle and everything kind of counts towards everything else.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the joys of blogging and the digital world, that it can open up a whole load of doors and allow you to jump onto different career tracks actually relatively easily, perhaps much more so than was the case a generation or so ago.
especially in such a digital world now. I mean, blogging spans so much more than just writing a 500, 750 word post and putting it up on your website. There's all of the social media management that goes with it. For a lot of people, there's video content creation now, there's photography, there's SEO, which for those who maybe aren't in this world, that's learning how to make sure your stuff appears in a Google search on the first page. And it's quite a specific skill of writing to actually write for that. So, yeah, I definitely wouldn't have got the job if I hadn't started taking my blogging seriously, even if it was still just a hobby.
You mentioned just now that you've used the blog to highlight, the challenges of returning to work post maternity, and some of the challenges that working parents face, and then also issues beyond that. So, a few months back, we spoke about you setting up the Bloggers for Refugees campaign to support the plight of those in the Calais jungle and raise awareness. And it's a real example of how the platforms that our blogs give us can be used to raise awareness and generate actual action around real world issues. So, can you give us an update as to how that's been going?
In truth, it kind of took a back seat for me in the second part. Well, kind of in December towards Christmas, we had a death in the family and another family member in and out of hospital throughout December. So I kind of had to take a step back for December. Also, the Calais jungle was dismantled. So working with Calais to just sort of figure out what that means for 2017 for them and for the people that they were supporting. But they are working in the Greek camps. So we're looking at how we can support different camps other than Calais. And also just looking at what do other bloggers want to do? Is Calais who they want to keep supporting, or is there a different cause that we might be able to support? So just kind of starting to look at other options as well now that immediate cause we were supporting isn't there necessarily in its original format.
Yeah, and because of course it wasn't just you, was it? You had dozens of bloggers hold their hands up and say, what can we do to help, didn't you?
Yeah, at last count there was 48 of us.
Wow.
Which was really exciting. But there was a group, not us actually, but I have made contact with the people who organised this and said we need to join forces. This is daft. We're doing the same thing but separately. And they did an Instagram sale in the lead up to Christmas called #OneWarn And this was bloggers such as Dress Like a Mum, who is kind of a fashion mummy blogger. I think Mother Pucker was involved as well, and a couple of other big time bloggers who were selling baby and children's clothes that were in really good condition by kind of higher end labels. They did an Instagram auction and all proceeds went to children in the camps to try and buy them winter clothes, which I just thought was absolutely fantastic use of the platform. It was really lovely way for bloggers to pull together, and it was also something that all the bloggers could obviously do from wherever they were because they just submitted the photos to the hashtag. So we're looking at other ways that we can join up with other groups of bloggers who are doing similar things, and also maybe something different other than just writing about it on our blogs.
Just from the examples you've given, blogging has given you so many opportunities and opened so many doors to go in different directions, both in terms of focusing on issues and in terms of work. So I think you're a great example actually of just how blogging can blur the lines, but in a positive way.
Yes, the one thing I would say to anyone who is a blogger and is potentially trying to career shift or maybe become what they consider to be a professional blogger is to remember all the other things that you do as a blogger. You don't just create blog posts. I know Vicky has done freelance for social media management for brands before. I know other bloggers who've done freelance work in copywriting for 8 marketing agencies in the UK. So there are all kinds of directions, and obviously you yourself, Tim, as well. Your blog helped you get your current role, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, Vicky, your blog has allowed you to catalogue your conception journey, but it's also become a source of work and income for you, as Amy's just mentioned. So tell us a little bit more about what you do on that front.
Yeah, originally I just started my blog as somewhere to put my poetry, to be honest. I didn't realise the journey it would take me on, and of course at that point I didn't know I would start a conception journey. So detailing that has been a great source of help to a lot of people. I've had a lot of private messages the daughter of one of my mum's neighbours has been trying for a baby. She'd been watching my vlogs, but hadn't realised that I was her neighbour's daughter. So her mum's neighbour's daughter. So it was a bit of a small world, that one. So it's helped a lot of people, but not just that. I mean, I've managed to transition into a new career with my blog, as a result of my blog. I mean, I work for Flea Enterprises. I've worked with Sally for nearly 3 years now. I do a lot of their admin and passwords and invoicing for them. I also work as a social media manager for a couple of companies, one of which is run by James Caan, the Dragon's Den fame. And then I also work for another blogger who has her own company. I do her social media for her. So yeah, it's really changed what I do as a career. I mean, prior to this, I was a driving instructor. So, but I've always loved writing. I've always wanted to be a writer, and I did a lot of courses, and I still wrote a lot of poetry. I've been doing that since left school, really. So the fact that now I've transitioned and also reignited my love of photography, and as I said earlier, I want to try and do that a bit more seriously. So, I wouldn't have found all these loves if it hadn't been for my blog.
As for me, I've got a significant anniversary coming up because I started my first blog 10 years ago next month.
Wow.
Back then I was writing about sport, and a year and a half or so later I started Slouching Towards Thatcham, although back then it was more just a general place for me to write about all kinds of stuff, of which family was just one element. And, in between I've started and closed various other blogs, and I guess it must be about 4 years now since I really started to focus much more on family and parenting based content. So, I only ever started blogging as a hobby simply because I enjoyed writing. But over the years, as with you two, it's opened up so many doors for me, and it's created a lot of friendships, and it's blurred the lines between a hobby and a career. I spent 3 years writing for the website of the Metro newspaper. I'm currently one of the Brit Mums Dads editors. I delivered a blogger's keynote at Brit Mums BML conference last year, presented a session at Blog on MSI. I'm doing the same thing again at the next one in May. And I've had some great opportunities that have led to experiences and paid work that I would never otherwise have had. And as Amy mentioned just now, the social media expertise that I've built up just by being a blogger directly contributed to me getting my current job. So yeah, blogging's had a huge influence on kind of both my work and to a certain extent my family life as well. And it's funny how you can start with something that is apparently just a trivial hobby, and it spins off in all kinds of interesting and significant directions. And I guess it's proof that if you do something you love and you enjoy, then often good things will happen. So before we go, what have we been up to this past week or so? Amy?
Well, I started a new job. I also turned 28 yesterday.
Yay! Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Thank you. Other than that, not a lot. I mean, it's been a quiet week.
How about you, Vicky?
Pretty much the same, to be honest. I came off all my medication yesterday, which I sort of felt was my security blanket in the whole of this pregnancy, the first trimester. So coming off that was a big deal for me because I've been taking some sort of medication since August last year. But other than that, that's been the only big thing that's happened over the last week or so.
Now, you see, for me, by contrast, it's been quite a busy week or so. Last week, I was on a 24-hour trip to Germany for work, which kind of broke up the middle of the week. And then on Saturday, we were out with friends in Ealing when I randomly bumped into another old friend who I saw for the first time in 16 years between Christmas and New Year. So you wait for years to meet up with someone, and then it happens twice in 2 weeks. Small world, eh? And that's it for another episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. We'll be back next week, but in the meantime, here's where you can find the three of us online. Amy?
I'm findingourfeet.co.uk, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter at findingourfeet.
And Vicky?
You'll find my blog, Verily Victoria Vocalises. URL is vevivos.com. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Vic Welton.
And I'm at slouchingtowardsthatcham.com, and you can find me on social media at ThatchamDad. So you can download this podcast on iTunes and on Android devices, on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com, and via a variety of podcasting apps. Do please give us a follow on Twitter at Parents Podcast, and also Facebook at facebook.com/meettheparentspodcast. So thanks for listening this week, and do please join us again next week. Good night.